In 369 BC, a brilliant Athenian mathematician named Theaetetus was carried from the battlefield at Corinth, gravely wounded, dying of dysentery. His friends gathered to remember him, not for how he fought, but for a conversation he once had decades earlier with a man who was himself about to die. That man was Socrates. Their conversation tried to answer one of the simplest questions in all of philosophy. What is knowledge? It failed, and that failure may be the most important thing Plato ever wrote. So what did Theaetetus propose? The dialogue pairs Socrates with a young math prodigy working together to define knowledge. The first definition, knowledge is perception, was already refuted. Now Theaetetus offers something more ambitious. Knowledge is true judgment. The Greek word is doxa, opinion, belief, judgment. This represents real progress. Unlike many of Plato's other interlocutors, Theaetetus grasps that Socrates demands an essential definition, not a list of examples. He understands the rules of the game. He's already becoming a philosopher. Socrates tests this definition with a thought experiment, one of the sharpest in all of ancient philosophy. Picture a courtroom. A crime has occurred. A witness saw it happen, watched the defendant commit the act with her own eyes. A lawyer brings the witness to trial. She testifies. A juror sits in the jury box, listens carefully, weighs the testimony, and reaches a verdict. The defendant is guilty. The juror's judgment is true. The defendant did commit the crime. But here is Socrates' question. Does the juror have knowledge? Compare the two minds. The witness has direct acquaintance with the event. She was there, she saw. The juror has a belief formed entirely through persuasion, testimony filtered through rhetoric, processed at a distance from the event itself. Both hold a true belief about the very same crime. Their beliefs are identical in content, yet one possesses genuine knowledge and the other merely holds a correct opinion. The juror was persuaded into truth. The witness encountered it. True judgment and knowledge are categorically different things. You can believe correctly without knowing. The second definition, false. Theaetetus doesn't give up. He offers a third and final definition, his most sophisticated attempt. Knowledge is true judgment accompanied by a logos. Logos is one of the richest words in ancient Greek. It means account, reason, argument, rational explanation. The root of our English word, logic. The claim, a true belief becomes knowledge only when you can provide a rational justification for holding it. You don't just believe the right thing. You can explain why it's right. And this sounds remarkably modern, and it is. Bertrand Russell, writing in the 1940s, proposed warranted assertability. Knowledge requires having sufficient grounds to assert a claim. Ludwig Wittgenstein, in his 1953 philosophical investigations, interrogated the same structure, asking what counts as adequate justification for any belief. Both were working downstream from this dialogue. The Theaetetus is the headwater of analytic epistemology. It sounds like this third definition should work. It doesn't. Here is the trap. If knowledge requires a logos, a rational account of why your belief is true, then you must know that your logos is itself valid. But knowing that requires its own logos, and knowing that second justification is valid requires yet another logos above it. The chain never terminates. Each layer of justification demands another layer of knowledge, spiraling upward without end. Socrates has revealed something profound. Knowledge cannot be assembled piece by piece from below, the way you stack bricks. It is architectonic, i.e. exceeds any chain of reasons you construct. You cannot bootstrap your way to knowledge from outside it. Every attempt to ground knowing in something more basic pushes the question back one step. The third definition, the most promising of all, collapses under its own logic. All three attempts have failed. The dialogue has no answer. So the dialogue fails, but Plato isn't done with us yet. Between these refutations, he inserts what he calls a digression. a lengthy praise of the contemplative life versus the practical life. Scholars have puzzled over this passage for centuries. It interrupts the epistemological argument without obvious purpose, but Plato is too disciplined a writer to include anything by accident. Consider the possibility that the digression is the real dialogue. The epistemological arguments all end in impasse, every definition fails, but the praise of contemplation offers something positive, a vision of the soul's telos, its ultimate purpose and goal. The unexamined practical life is the true detour from what matters. The contemplative life is the destination. This is characteristic Platonic irony, labeling his central conclusion a digression, so only the most attentive readers recognize it. The three definitions are the frame. The contemplative life is the painting. The dialogue never defines knowledge, but it transforms Theaetetus. He enters as a math student of Theodorus. He leaves practicing dialectic, Socrates' method of inquiry through structured questioning. This is the exact trajectory Plato prescribes in the Republic, mathematics first, then dialectic. The Theaetetus enacts in practice what the Republic prescribes in theory. Theaetetus's consciousness expands, so does his awareness of his own ignorance. Growing larger while feeling smaller, and that is the Socratic education. Now pull back to the frame narrative. This conversation is being remembered because Theaetetus is dying. The dialogue opens with him carried from the battlefield at Corinth, his body broken by wounds and disease. It closes with Socrates excusing himself. He must go to the chief archon's office to answer charges brought by Meletus and Anytus, the indictment that will lead to his trial and execution by hemlock. Socrates tells Theaetetus he wants to continue tomorrow. He never will. Both the student and the teacher will die, one on the battlefield, the other in a prison cell. The philosophical conversation exists, suspended between two deaths. This framing transforms everything. The inquiry was not safe, abstract speculation. It was an act performed by men running out of time. Philosophy, in Plato's telling, is not retreat from the world. It is engagement with the highest stakes the world offers. Greek culture had its heroes of action, Achilles, Ajax, Odysseus, men defined by physical prowess and cunning on the battlefield. The dialogue functions as mimesis, the Greek concept of representation, a portrait of good people doing meaningful work. Socrates offers a new model of heroism, a hero of the spirit whose courage consists in relentless questioning, and Theaetetus proves these categories are not mutually exclusive, a philosopher who dies in battle, a hero of intellect and action in a single life. The Theaetetus is Plato's argument that philosophical inquiry, even when it fails to reach its goal, is itself a form of courage. The conversation never answered its own question, but the young man who had it became someone different, someone better, because of the attempt. And 2,400 years later, we are still inside that attempt, still asking what knowledge is, still failing to define it, still becoming something better for having tried.